Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. Tonight on the program, we turn our attention to the growing outrage over a false alarm by a foreign group alleging genocide against Christians in Nigeria. The report, which many have described as a calculated attempt to distort facts and stir religious tensions, has sparked strong reactions across the country. Government officials and civic leaders from both Christian and Muslim communities say the claim is part of a wider political agenda by some Western interests to portray Nigeria as unstable. Also on the program tonight, we'll be doubling down on some of the political undercurrents ahead of the 2027 general election as the ruling APC continues to gain ground with high-profile defections from opposition ranks. Several developments across the South has emerged, with Enugu State Cabinet members already publicly showing their support for their defection to the APC, fueling speculation, or what many believe is the obvious reality that Governor Peter Obi could soon follow suit. A similar situation is quietly unfolding in Bayelsa State, where insiders suggest Governor Duediri may be under pressure to realign politically. Beyond politics, there's also a growing perception gap between the government's positive economic narrative and what international bodies like the World Bank are reporting. While political or official figures speak to recovery and reform, the World Bank's latest assessment points to deepening poverty and weakened household purchasing power, a reality many Nigerians say reflects their daily struggle. Joining us tonight to provide some insight to this development is Special Advisor to the President on Policy Communication, Barrister Daniel Bwala. He will share his insight on government's response to the genocide allegations, the politics of defection, and what the World Bank's warning means for Nigeria's economic direction. But first things first, the latest on political developments in the country.
FCT Minister Nyesom Wike says President Bola Tinubu will make sure no FCT High Court judge lives in a rented apartment by the end of his first tenure. Wike said this during the plug-off of the design and construction of new residences for the head of courts in Abuja, noting that the era of judges living in rented quarters will come to an end. Islamic cleric Sheikh Ahmed Gumi has again urged the federal government to negotiate with bandits, insisting that dialogue is the only way to lasting peace. In a Facebook post on Monday, he referenced the recent peace deal between Israel and Hamas as proof that even the toughest conflicts can be resolved through talks. Several members of the Enugu State Cabinet have defected to the All Progressives Congress ahead of Governor Peter Obi's expected move to the ruling party. Those who switched include Commissioner for Innovation, Science and Technology Lawrence Eze, STVSMB Chairperson Amaka Ngeri, and Commissioner for Labor and Employment Felix Nnamani. A video shared by the governor's media aide showed them holding APC flags and pledging support. And finally, Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has appointed Venibo Anabraba as the new secretary to the state government. A statement by the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Information and Communications, Dr. Anna Sirawo, said Anabraba will be sworn in today at 4 p.m. at the Government House in Port Harcourt.
Right, the political roundup there put together by Shafi Suleiman. Let's segue back into the main conversation of the day. We'll be touching base on some of these issues, especially around the politics of 2027. But first things first, let's talk about an issue that has been inundating the polity over the past couple of weeks, especially with emergence of some of those debates in the United States Congress and how Nigeria's international image is once again under the spotlight. Barrister Daniel Bwala is joining us to provide context to this and many of the day's conversation. Barrister, thank you so much for stopping by this evening.
It's good to see you. Good to see you too.
Right. You have spoken about this. The federal government has outrightly denied this particular position. The National Assembly has also denied it. In fact, they're sending a delegation, as we understand, to the United States on a diplomatic mission to discuss some of these gray areas, or at least the perception that's been painted out there. I mean, you've alluded to how the speech of the Vice President at the recently concluded General Assembly in the United Nations as being one of the reasons perhaps why Nigeria is receiving this much attention about religious persecution. Is that a hunch, a speculation, or is that grounded in evidence?
Let me say it is the speech of the president. The vice president merely represented the president. And so we look at facts. For example, the insecurity in Nigeria, the killings have been there for like a long time. And I'm sure that even those who projected the idea of religious genocide, they've been crying. They've been really calling on the West. And the West never bothered, to look at that, because to them it's none of their business. Until the incident that happened in the United Nations, they now feel they can exploit, which probably in the course of the meeting, I will tell you more about that. But the reason why we put 2 and 2 together is because 24 hours or thereabout after our policy position. And by the way, let's put it this way. We are not antagonizing Israel or involved in a problem with Israel. What we actually said was what the United Nations took as a position. 1, supporting a 2-state solution, and 2, condemning the inhumane treatment in Gaza. The inhumane treatment in Gaza has different interpretation. Blocking the food aid from coming, medical supplies, and you see young people dying. Nobody will support that. If you're fighting terrorism in your country, you cannot see the death of people and then support that. We are not members of Security Council. We are not actively involved in the conflict. We do not have soldiers to send. So it's just a passive statement. How is that a problem? But 24 hours after that, a comedian in the U.S. called Bill Maher, he has his program. Sometimes he does satire, at other times real conversation. He was the first person to start this campaign of religiosity, religious genocide in Nigeria. And he said in that talk that day he said to the effect that the young people, he wonders why the young people in Nigeria are not out in the street. Then he also said the international media that are not talking about this, shame on them. So after he said that, then you see multiplier effect, everybody taking turns. And then you have the members of the U.S. Congress. And incidentally, they happen to be Republicans. Incidentally also, they happen to be congressmen who are having a declining influence in the U.S. politics. The one who who championed the conversation was Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is already having a backlash because of his extreme position, supporting AIPAC. AIPAC means America, Israel, Public Affairs Committee. Sometimes they call it Action Committee. So they didn't like the fact that he was more loyal to the AIPAC than the American government or the American citizens. So some of the MAGA base, that very loud voice that started criticizing him, were people like Candace Owens, or people like Tucker Carlson. Some other times there is these strategies to the president. He too has criticized him quite a number. So he became more or less like a persona non grata. And then he felt that he could use this opportunity to pile up whatever popularity that he believes can reinvent himself. So we saw that. And the final straw that broke the camel's back was actually the report that he relied on. You see, for all of the insecurity in Nigeria, various organizations and multinationals have given their opinion. For example, the United States Institute of Peace, which I was privileged to be trained there, I provided services to them in the past. Their assessment of the situation of Nigeria, right from even when I went for the training, they said poverty, hunger, lack of equal opportunity, and bad leadership are the root causes of insecurity. Then they now went ahead to talk about ideology of the Boko Haram, right? If you look at Transparency International, Human Rights Group, all of them, none of them in their reportage or in their reporting of insecurity mention the killing of Christians or the killing of Muslims. But there was somebody who wrote a report that they relied on and they quoted. And that person is the leader of an organization called International Society for Civil Liberties and the Rule of Law. The organization is in Onitsha. If you look at his report, I tried to dissect it yesterday. He has analyzed various security situations. He claimed that his sources range from different places. But in all of the assessment, there is only one part of Nigeria he refused to acknowledge that the crime committed in those places were crime committed by the IPOB. He said, in fact, even crimes that IPOB people acknowledge and claim ownership, he said that it is the Nigerian army, the task force, the law enforcement, the security intel are the ones killing people, abducting priests, and doing all kinds of heinous things and attributing it to IPOB. Right. And then, in the middle of his report, which I can avail you later, He said they are doing that because of two things. That number one, because the IPOB, that by their very nature, they have a religious belief that is rooted in Judaism, like they are Jews. That's the reason why the Nigerian government, through the military and security forces, are fighting them. And then the second one, because they behave like the Jews. Now, look at 2 and 2 together, my brother. You rely on a report that lied that the killings in those places done by Nigerians, and that because they are Jews, the natural thing is for you to get the support of Jews who are outside Nigeria. So when you put 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 together, you would see that even though it was a report in Nigeria, but took advantage of the weakness in that area.
So what, in your view, is the end game here?
The end game is there are many scenarios. I have a little bit of training on security and intelligence. You look at cases, you look at worst case scenario, best case scenario, and all that when you're doing your SWOT analysis. But the thing is, one, we are achieving, and I can prove that economically we are coming out of a deeper problem and finding our food. This president has been able to put a successful surgery on their economy, on our economy. A strong Nigeria, a self-reliant and efficient Nigeria is a threat. Remember, as soon as Dangote started his refinery, and they said beats refinery in the Europe, the next thing is we see campaign against him from outside Nigeria. So one, to weaken our economy, because once there is destabilization, the economy will be weakened. The second scenario is to blackmail the government of Nigeria, right? If they make you unpopular by virtue of inciting violence, inciting all kinds of problem and division in the country, you will be considered as unpopular. The third case scenario is to use that as a tool to negotiate, to get you to agree to their point. From the government point of view, we are not looking at all of that, because no government has engaged or has confronted us. It is just dissident elements in the country. At our level, our communications, our engagement with the United States of America, I can tell you that today, if there is any president that values the fight against insecurity, insurgency, it's President Donald Trump. Remember when Obama was in government, they denied us access and purchase of so many of these weapons and the aircraft that we need to fight insecurity, and they are claiming human rights abuse by our army. When Donald Trump came and said insecurity, he called President Buhari and said, I'm willing to sell this thing as long as we are going to fight. That's his disposition. So we know, and he knows there is a willingness.
Some would say it's mainly because he's business-minded. As far as there's a buyer and seller type of agreement, he doesn't mind.
But there are bigger places with money that he could. So for example, talking about what they seek to achieve, like the embargo, right? If you are designated country or particular concern, you are likely to come under economic sanction, which can involve restriction on travel, which can involve embargo on the sales of weapons. There are countries that are countries of concern: China, Russia, Burma. There are quite a number. North Korea. There are plenty. Saudi Arabia, but they still sell weapons to Saudi Arabia. I think Donald Trump understands the largest black population in the world cannot be put in a situation where it will create a problem for them as far as immigration is concerned.
Right.
He believes in the America, he's reducing immigration. If you destabilize Nigeria, do you know how many millions of Nigerians will find their way in the United States and all over the places? So he knows strategy, and that's why he has not said anything against the government of Nigeria, but those elements are trying to incite him into saying that.
Okay, so I mean, clearly there is a lot of hyperbole involved in the analysis and the assessments, and a lot of cherry picking also with regards to some of the incidents, right? But a lot of people have also pointed out that the people making an argument for religious persecution are cherry picking, nitpicking some of the issues.
Correct.
And the people who are also making an argument against that are also cherry picking some of the issues. For instance, you would say there are communities in southern Kaduna, for instance, or in Benue, or in Plateau State, or the part of Borno that you come from, that would say, listen, this is a reality for us. I mean, they might not agree with genocide, but there are some communities in Nigeria today that will believe that they are persecuted mainly because of their religious beliefs.
No, once you persecute any group because of their belief or because of the specific nature of their grouping, then it's a genocide. That is, it falls under the classification of what genocide is. But for genocide to qualify, it has to be a state crime. It has to be a state-sponsored activities. So, for example, why they place some of these countries like Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the rest as country of particular concern is because they have laws that outlawed the rights of certain individual, whether on the basis of religion or whatever, right? So that's what. But in Nigeria, why we argued that it is not a genocide, remember, we admit of the fact that there is a security situation in the country. I mean, it would be foolhardy for us not to say there is no security.
Is it a security situation or crisis?
A situation. But I will tell you this today. Since the president came on board from 2023 to now, we have made more progress than the situation we were before he came. You know, prison break, right? It was all over Nigeria. You know, in this FCT, people were going to houses in the afternoon and abducting people and killing people. And all parts of Nigeria, there's no day you don't hear that. In fact, somewhere in Bwala, bandits killed soldiers and promised they were going to come to Aso Rock and carry the president. Audacity. But since 2023, we don't see that. Now, when I said that it's a situation and not a crisis, it's a crisis, but I say it's a situation rather than the word you use is that what is happening in Nigeria is a situation we inherited, but we're determined to stop it. But some of the pockets of problems you see here and there are natural. I'm so sorry, and it is so saddening to say that they are normal under certain circumstances because insecurity is a global phenomenon. And I cited an example. I said the United States of America is the bastion of democracy, right? But the crime rate in the US is more than the crime rate in Nigeria on the average. That's one. But the Western media don't talk about the crisis as much as they talk about investment opportunity in those countries. But when it comes to Africa, they don't even look at the progress you've made in terms of the GDP.
Isn't it a matter of scale? Right. That at the end of the day, we're talking about the impact of insecurity in this country. Many communities, rural communities especially, agrarian communities are unable to do business. We had a federal House of Representative member on the program just this past week who said he hasn't been to his own village in almost 12 years. In part of Borno State, and that
Federal
is
House of Reps?
Yeah, Federal House of Representatives. Honorable Jaha. I mean, obviously, the security situation is quite deplorable, to say the least.
Yeah.
This is something that has been re-echoed by your governor. This is something that has been re-echoed in the Northwest, in Zamfara. This is the same situation that we're witnessing in the North Central. So it is one thing to say the administration is trying to handle it. It's another thing to say that everything is under control. So
let me put it this way. The lawmaker that told you for 12 years he has not been to his community has indicted himself. So how did he win election? Now, 1, 2, and 3. Even if his village is inside Sambisa, to instill confidence to these people, he has to find a way of going there, that there are security coverage that will be given. I don't believe he meant it. He must have been misquoted.
No, you actually said it here.
A lawmaker must go to his village. I mean, which part of... There's no part of...
Not when it's inaccessible. There are so many people who can't go back to their villages.
A lawmaker is a representative of the people. You can't... That thing is self-indicted. Let him start going. That's one. But let me escalate it further to talk about the places where you mentioned. You see, when I say we made progress, I mean it. And I mean it because you mentioned the governor of Borno. The governor of Borno has been celebrating the victory we have been having over the fight against insurgency, Boko Haram, and the rest. In the last 6-7 months, then we saw the surge of insecurity every now and then hit and run, right? On one of the occasions, the governor said by himself that some of the causes of the recent surge is because when Boko Haram members were arrested, they were rehabilitated, reintegrated into the society. There are some of them, and they were trained as well, you know, to fight Boko Haram, their former organization. There are some of them escaped to the bush, and they are the ones bringing the fight back. Is that not understandable? It's a isolated case. If you go to Zamfara, and that's why we say it's not genocide, crisis anchors around many factors. Zamfara, is it not the place where you have natural resources? So you see the crisis there has more to do with the resources and land than it has on religion. Otherwise, how can bandits who profess to be Muslims kill their fellow Muslims? And that's what, as a government, we're saying, take away this issue of religion's fight. And let me say this, anywhere there is a crisis, if a bomb explodes, God forbid, in somewhere in town, the people that are predominantly around the place will be affected. So when there is a killing in a local government in which majority are Christians, the casualty will be more on Christians. If it is Muslim, there will be more. And we are seeing it with the data and the statistics. There is no targeting of a religion. But sometimes people blow this out. I am not suggesting that there were no cases. For example, I told you about the report of that fellow. Do you know, if you read the entire report, 70% of his reportage in that document, 70%, he was referring to the killing, murders that took place in 2014, 2015, 2016, and 17. For God's sake, how do you bring that to Ashwaju's government? How do you even rely on that? And he did something that is very criminal in nature. Now, when it comes to data, polling, opinion poll, you can do sampling and looking at margin of error, right? Sample a certain people and then project. When it comes to crime rate, you have to be actual about it. You know what he did? He calculated the total number of insecurity that were said to have occurred over the last 15 years. Then he divided by 15 and arrived at an average per year. When in fact, from 2009, 10, 11, right down to 14 and 18, there is a statistics. Even him, in that his contradictory document, admitted there is a decline. So if there is a decline, which Transparency International and all of these bodies have acknowledged, then how do you do total addition subtracted by the number of the years to arrive at average? Because you will be unfair to the government of the day to take crises that took place in the past, add to the ones that are declining to give a projection that is wrong.
I'm sure you've been keeping tabs on some of the developments in the polity. Last week, Nigeria's former Chief of Defense Staff launched a book, and he had quite a lot to say.
Right.
And some of his former military colleagues also believe that the point he made at that book launch was important enough that it became the talking point for at least 72 hours. And they use one particular expression that Nigerians are all too familiar with, state of emergency. And he says there is a clear lack of political will in prosecuting the war against insurgents, against bandits, and all the criminal underworld that are upending the lives of millions of Nigerians. I mean, when you have generals who know what they're talking about, saying that, you know, we need an all hands on deck approach, and basically saying that whatever it is that we're doing right now may be good, but it's not good enough. How does that square with your assessment that things are getting better?
So this is the worry I have, quite frankly. Without denigrating him, I respect him. Without denigrating his work, what I find, remember he was launching a book, so he has put out thoughts there. What I find quite sad, personally, and not just in the security sector, even in politics, when people who have been given a responsibility handled it and they are yet to be assessed as to whether they were successful or not, they leave the place, they tend to reinvent themselves. They tend to be solution providers. It's just like in politics. Politicians that have failed as governors, failed as lawmakers, they now want to run election and they are teaching you how to be a successful governors, as if you don't have a record. So when it comes to security and the fight against insecurity, most of these, I would love if you're giving a recommendation, but when you are declining to say there is no political way, the question then is, but you served. For all the period that you served, check the reports that were coming around that time. They were complaining about your administration or your leadership at that time. So how do you juxtapose that you worked in a place, you didn't do overnight change, and suddenly you have become provider of a solution?
Some would say, Barrister, you're focusing on the messenger and not the message.
No, so if the messenger is not credible, will the message be taken? If a madman comes here and gives information, will you believe
it's not just one person. You have generals, retired generals, who are saying this is a no-brainer.
But you quote him. You quote him. So and I don't speak to conjecture, right? If you give me a live situation, I analyze live situation. Am I in denial that there is no insecurity? But I outrightly object to the notion that there is no political will. Certainly not this administration that I know. Do you know how much investment President Bola Tinubu, engineered in the fight against insecurity in terms of procuring high-tech device, in terms of empowering and reboosting the armed forces? You know what we have acquired in terms of Tokano and the rest. You know how we improve the manpower and the welfare of the people fighting on ground. You know our collaboration in these neighboring countries dealing with this influx of people into the country. I mean, can you look at the measures that President Bola Tinubu is taking? Remember this crisis in Benue. He gave an order, go and produce these people. And by the time they produce, some of them are Christians. These are people who are saying that it is a killing of Christians. I'm not saying there is no killing of Christians, so there is no killing of Muslims. But what we as a government are objecting, let it be clear, the notion that it is because what Ted Cruz said, there is a genocidal killings and that the government, public officials are either complicit or participating. We object to that because we know night and day we've been working on that.
So you don't think there is inaction on the part of the government when it comes to restoring law and order in some of these volatile areas, in places like Katsina, in places like Sokoto, where there's been an exclusive reporting, hundreds of communities deserted for fear of bandits and their activities. I mean, over 10 local councils in Katsina now have had to enter what has become a new normal now in Katsina State, peace deals with bandits. You know, something that is unprecedented, to be honest.
But the thing is, if they are overwhelmed, I'm just giving an example. Do you know how many number of Nigerian armed forces do we have in the country? Less than 400,000. 220 million population.
We still have one of the best armies on the continent.
Yes, but can our armies ghost? Are they spirit? If you are here and you are not there, you are not there. Do you know the kind of ungoverned spaces we have in the country? Niger alone is bigger than some country. It's bigger than Holland. You come to Sambisa alone, covers it. We have a very big task and challenge, and we're dealing with $35 billion as a budget in a year to take care of everything else. Meanwhile, there is an economic analysis that says for us to even make the effort, we have to spend about $30 to $100 billion only on infrastructure. You are dealing with a country with limited security forces, with limited resources, with large land and multiplied insecurity situation. For those people who are very expert in insecurity, they will tell you that these terrorists that are coming into the country, you look at border, there's a component of border. Since the proliferation of arms because of the Gaddafi-Austin, all of these things, real security experts look at all of them together. It's not for the noise, right? For the punchline. To just say and say, insecurity situation in the country and government is not doing anything. I would love a conversation where they will mention specific action or inaction of government regarding a situation.
Yeah, but you talk about the funding that has been made. I mean, in one breath you said, you know, there's a lot of injection of money, but in another breath you're saying little that we have. But some would rightly point out that the administration is dealing with a crisis of prioritization. I mean, what do we prioritize? What does this administration prioritize? If there's 15 trillion now for a coastal highway, it means that, you know, you can afford to have said, listen, maybe security is the most important thing. So let's put more money in that first.
You see, there is sentiment around this coastal highway. And it's just always like that in Nigeria. If that same coastal highway were to be situated in northern Nigeria, nobody in the north will complain, but people of the south will complain. These are the politics of it. So we have to push aside the politics of it and look at the real situation. When you create the coastal highway, there are what we call after effects of that. You boost security. You create employment, job creation, and then you will boost the economy. So when people make argument against it, they ought to look at these factors. Is that a priority in the sense of when you do it, it will not impact positively on the country and the nation? Infrastructure is very key in the growth of every country. In terms of security, the security of lives and the welfare of the people shall be the primary responsibility of government. And that is what we are on top of the situation doing. Yeah. When was the last time we arrested leaders of Boko Haram? When was the last time you saw the surrendering by leaders of bandits? When was the last time, as soon as they abduct people, we recover them?
Well, they haven't been, they haven't been surrendering of late. They've had no cause to do that.
No, because they've been surrendering.
I mean, they've been surrendering. I'm not sure we're tracking the same development, but the point.
But give me an example. When was the last time, in your recollection, they surrendered?
You can't remember the last time. Actually.
Certainly, it happened more than twice this year.
Right. Okay. But the larger point is this: how much are we spending on one road, for instance, compared to how much budgetary allocation is for defense? Because also against the backdrop of that question about state of emergency, we had Major General UI Mohammed join the conversation last week, and he said, listen, in all his years of service, he'd used what he would best described for the most part, it's like using an iPhone 6 for the entire duration of his years in service.
Right.
When there's an iPhone 17 out there, there's an iPhone 16, there's an iPhone 15, and those are the kinds of ammunitions that we have in our armory. He was talking about tanks.
Right.
So I mean, that
things,
paints a clear picture, isn't it, when it comes to our defense spending?
Yeah, I agree, it paints a picture, but it is not a perspective-based picture. Because iPhone 16 and 17 or iPhone 10 and 17 have one common denominator. They can receive calls, they can make calls, they can receive text, they can send text.
But they have different capabilities.
So these are the fundamentals, right? I can call you, you hear me, I will hear you. I can send text, you send text, right? So
some would say that's an oversimplification of
not
what the
really.
issues are.
Okay, look at when you say
I mean, it's modern warfare, isn't it?
Right.
You want the best tools for the job.
So do you produce? You have to buy, right? You have to buy where it's available to buy. So when you hear about, and those people who are talking about Christian genocide, if this country is placed as country of particular concern, are you going to have access to this? Take, for example, iPhone 17 might be F18 or Raptor F22 or in fact F35 stealth, right? Or B2 bomber. Where can you get it? You can only see it in your dream. America won't sell it to you.
We bought Dr. Carnos, but I get your point.
We have not been considered eligible enough to have iPhone 17, which is either F15, F16, F15, F18, Raptor 22, or 30, or 35. These are the iPhone 17 Pro Max, right? When you don't have, you have to make use of Tucano, which is iPhone 12, as long as it can make calls and receive calls. See, when it comes to
so are you saying the army has all it takes as far as arms and ammunition?
No, certainly not. There will never be any defense budget anywhere in the world that will be sufficient. I will be the last person to tell you that, because there are emerging issues. Look, we don't have the technology that is required. The world is changing. Warfare now is going scientific. They are now producing machines that will have less people in combat fields. That's why we have drones. We have satellite system. There are people, you will see barrage of drones coming to your country and people are not inside. That's high tech. One, even if you have the money, the countries that will sell to you, they may have a pact among each other. For example, not even America. If you approach the British people to buy F-18, they can't sell it to you because they have a defense contract between them and America. If you approach France, it is like that. So there is a weapon that is assessed to be one that is in the market for you. Are we buying those? My answer is yes. Two, do we need more money to invest? My answer is yes, because we also need to motivate and make sure that the welfare of those who fight and that of their families are protected.
Right. Okay. Let's segue into what many would say is the offshoot of the insecurity situation that we're dealing with, which is the economic situation in the country.
Right.
It's been on a downward spiral for the most part of the last 10 years, but it has gotten worse since the inception of this administration, since the declaration of fuel subsidy. I think you and I can both agree on that. Most recently, the World Bank came out with a report that paints an even bleaker picture of what will happen at the end of the year if we're on this current trajectory and what may happen next year if things don't change. They say, listen, the reforms might be working, but it is not having the desired impact.
And what did they say is the reason?
Help us square the circle here. I suppose you have an explanation that paints the picture. Because the reality is that the Tinubu administration is selling Nigerians what many would consider a dummy about the economic recovery. But from the outside looking in, the rest of the world is telling us that the situation is as bad as many people inside the country are painting it out to be.
So you see, I don't know how to explain the dichotomy and sometimes the contradiction between the same World Bank when they come to us and you report it and they said that we are making significant progress as far as the reform is concerned. The same with IMF. The other day, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala came and you heard what she said. Now, the reason I will give my explanation as to the reason why we have the indices around poverty and that what they are saying is something that is of a concern to us is one. If not for this reform, Nigerians may not be in the situation they are in at the moment. But is there anywhere in the world where you will do reform and there is no change of lifestyle, there is no inconveniences? In fact, that's the reason why it is called a reform. everybody will have to change. Now, I'm coming. Let me land. So when we did the reform, like removing subsidy on fuel, unification of the Naira, is it not the subsidy and some of these things that people benefit, but in fact, it's even benefiting the people who are involved in this subsidy racket, and not the Nigerian people? Why we were doing that? There were lots of other aspects of the economy that were dying. Infrastructure, poor infrastructure everywhere. Healthcare system, primary health education, in fact, advanced education. So the cost of living became higher. Now, President Bola Tinubu said, and this is as recommended by breakthrough groups and all economies around the world, that given the situation we find ourselves, the only way out is for us to embark on a reform. That we did. And we knew the consequence, that there will be temporary hardship, which created this multiplier effect of poverty in the land. We understand that. But what is government doing to ameliorate that? You see the magical reform in the area of agriculture, providing food and subsidies on certain products, taking away taxes on imports, duties, and the rest, so our people can have. Look at livestock. Look at the way they bring in vaccines. Look at the way they give in money to the people in the livestock industry. So government is bringing measures to ameliorate the hardship for the moment. The same thing in other aspects of our economy. Now people have difficulty paying school fees, but the government introduced the NEL fund so as to give money to the people to be able to go to school and pay for their living condition. If you come to the northern Nigeria, where I come from, we have a crisis situation of kidney failure in the northern Nigeria. But now dialysis is what? Subsidized throughout the government hospitals in Nigeria. In terms of delivery, most affected.
12 of them.
Yeah, because we have limited number of hospitals now. Do we have 36? Now, secondly,
I just wanted you to appreciate that they are not enough to meet the growing demands.
Yes, and that's why we have even revamped a lot of other aspects of hospital. We recruited volunteers, 774,000 in all the local government of Nigeria to help with healthcare needs, right? If you look at security and insecurity, so government is doing its best because of limited resources. I'm sure when we were all in primary and secondary school, they thought about economy. They talk about scarcity and then unsearchable demand and how you navigate around it. That is exactly what we are confronted. But there is nobody, World Bank, IMF, anybody who has not acknowledged that this reform is working.
Yeah, but in the final analysis, things are bad.
No, things are getting better. Was this situation we're in now, was it the same way 2 years ago when the government took power?
I mean, inflation was lower than what it is right now. And in that World Bank report, it also says the projected single-digit inflation figure, it says it's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. And that's what this administration is
telling. And what did they give as their reason?
I mean, it's basically not going to happen. The trajectory that we're on, they looked at all the indices. I mean, these are the same people that gave this administration $500 million to give to the poor. So they pretty much know what they're doing. I mean, you can't take their money and not take their opinion.
No. Peter Obi even takes opinion from a madman. How much more people? Anybody.
I'm not sure how Peter Obi fits into the conversation.
I know, but I'm giving you an example of opinion. People with brains, people heading institutions, give opinion. We're not going to listen. But the thing is that even when it comes to the application of the IMF rules, there is what is called strong country ownership. Strong country ownership is the departure from the rule to meet with the exigency of your situation. Meaning that if the Brentwood Group policy is saying strictly, take out this, and your local needs does not match it, that as an exception to the rule, you can depart from the rule and meet with your local. That's why the president is taking away import duties, taxes, and the rest. We bring in, encouraging people to bring brown rice. So, in a nutshell, everybody's opinion is received. What we object to is the notion that the economic reforms are not working. If we say it is not happening at the pace and speed that is required, I will probably agree with you. And my reason would be that we have limited resources and we have large population to deal with. Nigeria is the largest black population in the world, my brother.
And give me a sense of what Nigerians believe is the narrative of the government being half-truths about what is actually happening.
The question
our purchasing power, the purchasing power of households has been greatly diminished. People pay more for transportation, people pay more for energy, people pay more for school fees, people pay more for healthcare, and the metrics are all in red from the point of view...
No, the metrics are not all... Have you seen the data?
From the point of view of households.
Right.
We're not talking about the macroeconomics, the GDP numbers. Yeah. Obviously, there are some of them who are in the green.
So
right?
they take time to have effect in the masses.
How much time, if you have to put a pin on it, how much time do Nigerians have to continue to be patient?
And my answer is we have enjoyed the fruition of some of the policies that were initiated since 2023.
When you say we, are you talking about the majority of Nigerians or people in government?
So let me give you an example. You see, I'm so sorry that it is our job and we have to do it. But sometimes you speak it and explain it in different language. I give you an example. When people talk about ordinary Nigerians, I ask, who are the ordinary Nigerians? My brother, you are an ordinary Nigerian, I'm an ordinary Nigerian. But let us even take it to the people on the streets, right? The president introduced local government autonomy, isn't it? We have increased revenue to states. States start getting over 300%. If the governors are trickling the same effect in building the roads, primary health care, and then improving the life of their locals, we will not be talking about ordinary Nigerians. Because that's how democracy works. You cannot keep focusing on the federal government and forget about the state government who have enjoyed increased revenue. But let us even push the argument further. You talked about school fees are going high. That's why we introduced the policy. Now, over 500,000 people are beneficiaries. But we are not stopping at that. We intend to increase and make sure that the speed is much when we generate revenue. That's why we introduced the tax law.
Barry said, when the World Bank says 139 million people are at risk of falling under the poverty line by the end of 2025 and over 141 million next year, you're talking about interventions that impacts 500,000 people? You feel that is scaling up to make a difference?
Now, that was 99 billion naira that we invested to affect 500,000. If we have more revenues, we can start with 5 million.
But you have more to spend now, don't you?
More to spend, but in other areas. So, for example, what we are seeing coming out of non-oil revenue is quite encouraging, meeting our target in terms from revenue from tax and some of the related matters. Good. So, all of these things with time, when the revenue increases, you see the expansion. Even the nail fund, we talk about the school fees. We don't intend to stop at 500,000. When we talk about, you mentioned, when I mentioned dialysis and you mentioned the number of hospitals, if we have enough resources, we make it 36 at once, and then we improve. So if you have money, you cannot spend all of the money in one sector of the economy.
Right. I thought, for the ordinary Nigerians listening to this conversation, the explanation
Remember the minimum wage we introduced to improve the living condition of the people?
Out significantly.
How?
I mean, just look at the headline inflation. It tells the entire story, isn't it? I mean, what you're able to buy right now with 2,000 naira, I mean, you usually get it for 500 naira just 2 years ago. But that's not the point I was driving at. The bigger question is this, that when you consider all the administration is talking about,
right,
and you consider what is happening on the ground, what in your view is the missing link here? Are people just not able to understand what the government is communicating? Or what in your view is actually happening? Because there is no agreement between what the government is saying and the experiences of millions of Nigerians.
Now, in your opinion, if I ask you how did you arrive at millions of Nigerians, you probably say what you read.
I mean, let's just go with what the World Bank says.
No, what did
and I believe they are an authority on this particular issue.
What I'm saying, who are the authorities? So, for example,
the World Bank. You don't believe the World Bank is right?
See, the World Bank is not judgment of court. They have been wrong in many countries of the world.
But you accepted when they praised you, when they said things
that's
are
what I'm
looking up.
saying. Even when they praised us,
right,
we say, well, it's an encouragement.
But we don't. But you didn't push back.
No,
you didn't
but
criticize them.
Let me put it this way.
Right.
You see, we live a life where if you say, Bwala, you're doing well, I say thank you. But whether I know I'm doing well is not dependent on because you said I'm doing well. I have set goals. I have performance indicators. I assess myself based on that, and people assess me. Now, the problem with Africa, right, is that we have put so much faith in international organizations. That's why this narrative around Christians being killed, you know, if not because we are taking measure, it will sweep our places. You believe World Bank probably more than Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria. You probably believe one mechanic somewhere in England more than a professor in Nigeria.
Not sure I do, but okay. Just before we digress, because we switch gears, because we have a couple of minutes to spare, right?
Right.
There is this palpable sense that Nigeria's cohesion as a country is quite dire. to say the least. I mean, there are pockets of incidents here and there that suggest that Nigerians are not necessarily on the same page all the time. You look at the Uromi incident in Edo, you look at a couple of incidents in Plateau, for instance, and you get the sense that, listen, while there may be an exaggeration of the tensions or the killings and the violent conflicts, there is, this deep-rooted disharmony across Nigerian communities, and the administration is not doing anything about it.
What you just said is not backed up by facts. It is an opinion.
I mean, when people are lynched, you don't think it's enough
We
fact?
just talked about insecurity, and I told you the strides we've made and the effort we're making. You veered into economy and other aspects. You come back to security. So I'm happy to re-answer it again, and I do hope you will listen keenly, right? I told you, and it bears repeating, pockets of insecurity situations can happen anywhere in the world. In the United Kingdom, particularly in London, there are places, boroughs within the London borough, where you cannot go when it is 7 o'clock and walk straight. They will collect your phone. It's an advanced country. Let me finish. Last 2 weeks, in Manchester, a Jewish committee was lynched. Advanced country with technology. In America, Charles Kirk was in a broad daylight in the university engaging in debate. He was shot dead to the views of millions of people. And I told you about the crime rate in America is more. So insecurity is what you keep dealing with. The point to be made is, if the government has not made the effort that is required, then it calls for criticism. But this rhetoric of reputation, I call it the fallacy of reputation. And I see that anywhere I appear, anywhere. Nigerians are suffering, can't you see? Nigerians are suffering, can't you see? Nigerians are suffering. But I prefer an argument like you did, and very well, I must commend you, where you go to data, numbers, and cite authorities. So I can interrogate as well the genuineness of the data and the source.
Does it frustrate you that Nigerians are complaining about their everyday experience?
No, they have every right. We even love it that Nigerians complain when something is going wrong. It means that they are engaging with government.
Okay. Final point. Let's switch gears and talk some politics before we wrap things up. This week we anticipate, at least according to some of the reporting, that the APC is going to welcome Governor of Enugu State, and most likely before the end of the week, Governor of Bayelsa State.
We might welcome you too soon.
I'm not sure that is important, but the bigger question is, we've seen this wave of defections continue to soar. And
what do you think is not important for you to join APC?
APC, I'm apolitical, and I want to say that
it's better. So it's not about importance. It's about the choice to be apolitical.
Okay, but back to the topic. The easy question to ask is, APC is reaping what it did not sow.
How?
The PDP won at the ballot, and then the APC is now taking over institutions.
People made a choice. Don't they have right to choose? Freedom of association.
On election day.
No, what I'm saying, pardon?
But on election day, people chose PDP. And now, the governors are taking the mandate of the PDP to the APC.
And the governors,
you don't think there's anything...
The governors enjoy the mandate of the people, right? The governors
You don't think this is an aberration?
How is it it's choice? See, every citizen of Nigeria under the Constitution has a freedom of association and freedom to belong to any political party, including freedom to change from one party to another. 1. 2, governors, lawmakers who are leaders of their people have a freedom to change party if they feel that the fortune of the state under their care is better served if they move to another political party. And I will tell you why our party is attractive. All this noise around, they coerce them and the rest, these are the type of criticism that is the goggle of non-achievers politically. I give you an example. The president, nobody did that. There have been presidents before him. When he now removed the subsidy in order to create additional revenue for the state, which governor will they benefit from large sums of money that enable him to deliver on government?
You're making it look like it's out of the magnanimity of President Bola Tinubu. But this is cast in stone. There's a sharing formula. The president doesn't have to do anything extra.
If he has not taken the decision, will there have been money to share? I
mean, it would have, first subsidy would have ended by June that year when he came in.
He can bring an appropriation. He can bring I'm coming. He can, if the president is not buying an idea, he can bring a bill to the National Assembly to repeal and replace the existing bill.
There are a lot of people who would say the APC is quite panicky about what's happening on the other side of the aisle.
How can a party receiving people from different political parties be panicking?
I mean, okay, let me get to the question first. People like Goodluck Jonathan are rumored to be contemplating a return into the arena for 2027. Your 2 cents on what's happening on the other side. I know you're keeping tabs on their developments.
Yeah, I can tell you that. Well, with he's not throwing shade at Goodluck Jonathan. He has outlived his usefulness. And let me tell you this: all the states in the South Nigeria, I would assure you, Bola Tinubu. You just in your monologue, you were even trying to say even the one of Bayelsa is under impression of joining All Progressive. If you want to win president, you start from where you come from now. When every state in your region, geopolitical zone, are subscribing to APC.
But you also lost every state in the southeast in 2023.
So what
even when Labour Party didn't have a single governor.
No, Tobo, what I'm saying,
right.
You told me that a politician, Jonathan, is nursing the idea of coming into foreign. You have to have a base now. Let me even start by asking you, since he left office, has he been active in politics to at least have influence over structure? He doesn't.
So you're not worried?
How are we worried?
Who worries you the most on the other side?
What worries us the most is how to improve the life of Nigerians. We don't have a competition. Start counting them one after the other.
You're worried about Peter Obi?
Which Peter Obi?
You're not worried about Atiku Abubakar?
All of them combined, we are not worried about them. And let me tell you this. You see, I love it. You create a time we talk about politics. Politics is a science. It's not conjecture. It's like polling. You can tell who. If you don't have structure, you don't have Peter Obi. How many the one governor he has wants to join us. The lawmakers here, they are all moving away.
I don't know if Alex Otti will corroborate that comment.
I'm saying, okay, but he has said that
he's not leaving Labour Party.
But he has said he endorsed and support President Bola Tinubu.
All right. And on that...
I don't know whether you get the point.
On that healthy
I
political
want to see a day a politician will win in this country without structure.
Okay. Only time will tell. Barrister Daniel Bwala, thank you so much for stopping by on Daily Politics this week. I appreciate you very much for the analysis. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And that is a wrap on tonight's edition of the program. Thank you most kindly for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow, live and exclusive on Trust TV. Until next time, I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. We'll see you soon.